us from Washington, Congressman Adam Schiff. He represents the Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena area and serves as the ranking Democrat on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, thanks for taking the time.
It's good to be with you, Conan.
So characterize in your terms the importance of what we have learned this past week relating to that June 2016 meeting right around the California primary when Donald Trump Jr. met not just with a Russian attorney, but a Russian lobbyist, along with his brother-in-law and Paul Manafort, then the campaign manager for the Trump campaign.
You know, I think to truly understand how significant this is, you have to look at the context of what was going on at the time. At this time, in June of last year, the Russians had already hacked Democratic institutions. They were already in possession of stolen Hillary Clinton emails. And the president was just about to wrap up the nomination. And here you have essentially a Russian oligarch on the basis of information given to him by the Russian government, reaching out to Donald Trump through his son to arrange a meeting so that they could give the Trump campaign dirt on Hillary Clinton. And you have the president's son, along with Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort, three of the most significant people in the campaign at this pivotal time in the campaign, not only taking the meeting, but also Donald Jr. emailing back, we would love it, basically, if they could get information from the Russian government helpful to their campaign as a part of the Russian government effort to help Donald Trump. And so they take this meeting, and then, of course, when the investigation begins sometime later, they say we never had any meetings of this kind. When they're confronted with the facts of the meeting, then they say, well, the meeting was about adoptions, which was clearly not the purpose of the meeting. The purpose was all about getting dirt on Hillary Clinton. And then they're forced to admit that, okay, this was the full purpose of us taking the meeting, and we were deeply disappointed. That is a quite shocking sequence of events, and I think very significant in terms of showing an intent to collude with the Russians. Clearly, Donald Jr., speaking for the campaign and for the family, said if the Russians had this information, they wanted it, and more than that, even suggested to the Russian government that late summer would be best. And of course, late summer is exactly when the Russian government started to publish these stolen emails.
Now, you have said that he had a moral, that is, Donald Trump Jr., a moral obligation to come forward and certainly tell the FBI that he had been contacted by a foreign agent about something related to the campaign. But did he do anything that was illegal?
Well, that all depends on what happened at that meeting, and I don't think we can rely on his own representations, given they have changed multiple times, even within the course of the week. And it depends on what evidence, and I can't go into any particulars, but what evidence the investigation produces in terms of what followed on after that meeting. But we do know that that email was quite accurate in the sense that the Russian government did possess damaging information that they thought they could help the Trump campaign with. We do know, and the intelligence community has concluded, that as that email chain revealed, the Russian government did want to help the Trump campaign. So a lot will depend on what we are able to corroborate, what further steps were taken. But certainly if there was an agreement by the Trump campaign to coordinate or conspire with the Russian government to interfere in a U.S. presidential election, that would violate any number of laws.
A colleague of yours, another one, Brad Sherman of Sherman Oaks, Democrat, introduced formally articles of impeachment last week. Now, you have said it's way too early, that you don't want to be involved in or perceived to be involved in the nullification of an election, that the investigation that you're talking about is closer to the early stages than it is to the late stages. That said, is there a possibility that talking about impeachment and actually introducing articles could somehow interfere in your probe?
Well, there's obviously a divergence of opinion on this issue within our caucus. From my point of view, we are, as you mentioned, I believe still very early in the investigation, and I think it's premature to be judging where we're going to end up at the conclusion of the investigation. I have the rare experience of having prosecuted an impeachment case in the U.S. Senate. I helped lead a prosecution of a corrupt federal judge out of New Orleans. And I'm very familiar as a result of that with what it takes to meet the standard of high crimes and misdemeanors. It is not something that is easily legally defined. But there is a very practical standard, particularly when you're in a Republican Congress dealing with a Republican president, and that is, will the president's conduct reach the point, or the evidence about that conduct reach the point where even Republican members feel that he must be removed from office and can make that case to their constituents, and it's not perceived as just nullifying an election. That is, I think, the very practical standard, and I don't think that we ought to be exploring that without fully developing what the evidence is and making sure that the case meets that standard. So from my point of view, we keep our focus on the facts, we follow the facts where they lead, and then we worry about the consequences once we've concluded our investigation.
Congressman Adam Schiff, ranking Democrat on House Intelligence. Congressman, thanks for taking the time.